Durban, and Ahmed had told me to contact him and he'll provide me with accommodation.
So you were in Durban, and explain to the court what happened on the morning of 25 October 1971.
I stayed with Jakes Waracha for a night or two, and then he suggested I stay with some friends, and I wanted to stay with my cousin and some other students from the Transvaal then were sharing a flat, and I went to go and stay in the flat with them in Durban. They were writing exams or they went to varsity, and on a Monday morning at about 8:30, and that Sunday night I had the most terrible toothache, and I said, following morning I've got to go to a dentist. But Monday morning I was rudely waken up by between 6 and 8 security policemen who had surrounded my bed. And they asked me, "Are you Mohammed Timol?" I was completely disorientated. I said, "Yes." And they said, "You are under arrest. We got you now." And they took me to the security police officers in Fisher Street in Durban.
And please explain what happened at the security police officers in Fisher Street.
After a while, I was taken to an office. Initially, I was held in a holding room, and then taken to one of the floors and taken to one of the offices, and then a group of security policemen came between 3, 4, 5. And remember, you are caught completely unaware, so you are not registering as you would normally register in a normal situation. And the thing was that we've got you, we've got your brother, we've got a big fish, and we've got all of you. Right. Now is the time to sing.
And what did they want you to sing about?
They started interrogating me. When I returned, what was I doing in England? The usual question: who are the people that they started? Who did I meet in South Africa after my return? And as I tried to respond to them, the answers that they wanted, the usual thing was that you're talking lies, you're talking bull. You know, I mean, that was the normal approach of security policemen. A brick was placed in front of me. I was not made to sit at all. A brick was placed on the ground. A brick was there. A brick was placed on the ground. I was made to stand on the bricks. And then I was given 2 telephone directories and told to hold it up. And I had to stand on the bricks. And if I relaxed, I got punched in the face, I got smacked, I got kicked, and this continued. On and off, it continued for hours on end. Different questions, the interrogation continued. Until about 11 o'clock that night. That was a Monday night.
Just before you leave your abuse, were you made to sit on a so-called imaginary chair? And if so, what happened?
Between standing on this brick and holding up, and telephone directories are quite heavy, and you keep it up, you can only keep it up to a certain point. And then made to sit on an imaginary chair. Actually, you're sitting on a chair which is not there, on a squatting position. And if you relaxed, you got kicked, you got beaten up, you got smacked. You had to sit up again, sit on an imaginary chair, and there would be laughter around, and I mean, it just continued.
And where would they be beating you, and how would they beat you?
Basically on the stomach with punches. In my case, it was mainly punches.
And mainly on the stomach?
Stomach punches in the stomach, on the side of the stomach, in the middle of the stomach, on the chest, and smacks.
And how long did this go on for?
This continued. I would say my interrogation started at about probably any time between 10 and 11 that morning. I was picked up at about 8:30, and it continued about 11 o'clock at night. And at some point, I then got to realize that the head of the security branch of the Durban officers, Lieutenant Colonel Steenkamp, had also come just to see what I looked like, it seemed like.
And you do recall some of the names of the individuals interrogated?
There was an Indian security policeman. He was very nasty. His name was Lieutenant Naik, which I can never forget. And there was a security policeman by the name of Andy Taylor, Captain Andy Taylor. He was a thin, tall guy, very brutal. And there was a security policeman. He was supposed to be the nice guy, you know, to try and soften me up after the others have beaten me up. His name was Lieutenant Wessels.
Vessels?
Wessels, that's right.
What was their main interest? What were they trying to extract
Their
from
main
you?
interest was that what was I doing in the UK and who did I meet after my return to South Africa? And I mean, that was their main interest. As far as they were concerned, if Ahmed was involved in underground activities, the possibilities was that I was also involved in underground activities. So I was taken to the cell that night at about 11 p.m. At the police station, the Beria police station in Durban. I don't even think that we went through the formalities of the police station occurrence book, registering me as a detainee, political detainee, but just taken into the cell, and I was locked up there. And it gave me time to try and recollect what happened in the last 12 hours, because I had, in my training, I also had training in interrogation methods and what happens during interrogation. So I was not sure if Ahmed was arrested or not. So it was important for me to hold on as long as possible, that if Ahmed was not arrested, would give him time to get away as well. And this was one of the things in our training. The following morning, the security police came and fetched me again, taken to Fisher Street, must have been about 8:30 in the morning, and the usual interrogation started. There would be 3-4 guys. They would change, other guys would come and standing on a brick and hitting you in the stomach. At some point, I broke. I could not take the beating up, and I told them that I had received training and that somebody was supposed to have contacted me, but that did not happen. Right. Now I think what was important for them is who are the people I was in contact with in South Africa. And these were all innocent people. These were my relatives, my friends, and I mentioned whoever I could remember, I mentioned them, and subsequently I learned each and every person that I had mentioned was called by the security police, or the security police had interviewed them to corroborate my story. That was on Tuesday. It continued till about 11 o'clock Tuesday night as well.
I see. So how long were you kept in Durban?
On Wednesday, I was kept in Durban for a month. But if I can just come to Wednesday, I think which is very significant. On Wednesday, the same procedure started. I was picked up at 2 security policemen to come to Beria police station, take me to Fisher Street, and then interrogation would start. So they were now trying to dissect everything that I told them. But at about 6 o'clock on October 27th, that's my 3rd day of detention. I was detained on the 25th, and this was the 27th of October. At about 6 p.m. in the evening, all of a sudden, the interrogation stopped. 1-2 security policemen left, and another one came, and all of a sudden, there was just complete silence. And after a while, I was asked, would I like to have coffee, which they've never offered me before, and would you like something to eat? I've had nothing to eat all day. The only thing was, before leaving the jail, you were given a cup of coffee and 2 slices of bread, that's all. So I said, yes, I wouldn't mind having something to eat, and I was given a sandwich or something. And later on, on that Wednesday evening, I was taken back to the cell at the Beria police station. It was a routine now. But I could not understand why all of a sudden there was this complete stop as far as the interrogation was concerned.
So there was a marked change in their behavior.
And a marked change in their behavior.
And you were to discover on the Thursday probably what happened.
On Thursday morning, 2 security policemen came to the Berea police station again. 2 or 3 security policemen came, and they tell me, Mohammed, are you now going to tell us the truth? But everything what you've been saying, we don't accept it. Here's pen, here's paper, you're going to write and tell us the truth. And if we come back and if you not told us the truth, you are going to rot in the cell. And they left, and I was relieved, because there was going to be no interrogation. It could have happened any time in interrogation. But at about 6 o'clock that evening, and we are now on a Thursday, at 6 o'clock that evening, at about 6 p.m., Lieutenant Wessels, who's supposed to be the softie, and another security policeman came to the cell I was locked in, and I thought they were going to take me back for interrogation, and they told me, Mohammed, we have bad news for you. And I asked him, what's it? They said, your brother is dead. I asked him, how did he die? They said, no, we don't have information. We're still waiting for information from Pretoria. I asked them, can I attend the funeral? They said, no, it wouldn't be possible. And they left. So I was left to my own thoughts that night. Now, do I accept what the security police are telling me? Or is it just a ruse? Or is it the truth? I spent that entire night debating, is it true that Ahmed is dead? Firstly, is it true that Ahmed was arrested? Or if he's arrested, is he now dead? Or are they just playing games with me? Right. I pulled through the night. Friday morning, 2 security policemen came and fetched me again, going back to the routine. And as we drive into Fisher Street, the security police officers, I see a newspaper poster on a street pole there. Death plunge, Foster speaks. Foster is the Prime Minister of South Africa at that time. Death plunge, Foster speaks. And the first things come to my mind. There was a death in detention when someone fell off the 7th floor of the security police officers and Grace building in Johannesburg, von Willach Street. Someone that we had known, a person by the name of Suleiman Babla Saluji, 7 years earlier. He died as a result of what we are told at that time, that he committed suicide by jumping out from the 7th floor of the Grace building at the security police offices in Johannesburg. This was long before John Foster Square. So in my mind, is this what has happened to Ahmed? So as we arrived at the security police offices, I'm ushered into the lift, and the security policeman who brought me to the police station did not get in and handed me over to an Indian security policeman. And as we went up in the lift, he then expressed his condolences. I'm sorry about your brother. Now, do I accept that, yes or no? It's very difficult, very difficult. That particular day, there was no interrogation, but just some questions were asked. And at some point on that late Friday afternoon, I was taken back to my cell.
So you spent the weekend in your cell, and then you were taken back to the security police officers.
Subsequently, after a few days later,
I
I was taken there. A statement was prepared by Andy Taylor. He wanted me to go through the statement. I went through the statement. I corrected the spelling mistake, and that caused me a big slap on my face. And he was a big man. So he slapped me on my face. Why did I correct his spelling mistake? So
some are sensitive about their spelling.
In retrospect, I can laugh about it years later. And I was left most of the time in a cell then. And occasionally they would fetch me and corroborate something, take me back to the cell. And I was in a cell behind a police station.
Throughout your detention, period of detention,
Yes.
was there any time when you shared a cell with someone?
Sorry, any?
Any time during that period where you were with someone in a cell
No, I was in solitary confinement
throughout?
throughout.
Just wanted to-
I had no contact with any other persons who may have been detained. I didn't even know who were detained.
Yes.
Were you told in terms of what law are you being detained?
In terms of
Which law? Which law were you
Section 6 of the Terrorism Act.
They told you
They,
Section 6.
they told me I'm detained under Section 6 of the Terrorism Act. I think the first or second day when, during the course of the interrogation. And I think Colonel Steenkamp then came and told me I'm detained under Section 6 of the Terrorism Act.
Okay.
Your Lordship, we will be submitting his Department of Justice file in due course.
Yes.
You say you signed a statement that was presented to you.
That's right.
Do you remember essentially the contents of that
The
statement?
contents of the statement, basically you are giving them your life story. Growing up in Budiput, getting involved in political activities, removing the flagpole from the school, not singing the stem, right? The protests, right? My stay in England, my contact with Yusuf Dadu, with Esop Pahad. But one thing I did not break during my interrogation was that Ahmed had gone to the Soviet Union. If they knew about that, I would have been asked. The fact that I was not questioned or anything, I think only probably many years later it became public that Ahmed had gone to the Soviet Union.
So after you had signed that statement, you've recorded in your affidavit that you didn't see those security branch officers again.
No, I did not see any of the security, except after that statement on the night of the 30th of November or the 1st of December, Lieutenant Wessels and Lieutenant Niger woke me up at about 11 o'clock at night. I said, am I going back for interrogation? And they said, take your things. I had very little things, and we're taking you home. And I washed at the tap that was outside. I just washed my face. I got into the car. I had to sit at the back. I was handcuffed handcuffed to a strip that is on the door there, or on the ceiling of the car. I was stripped and went to another police station, and it seems another detainee was then also in another car, and the two cars then left for Johannesburg. And throughout the journey, I was told, you're going home, your parents are waiting for you. I remember stopping in Harrismith. I've never been through the Free State. We stopped in Harrismith. The white security policemen, there were 3 of them, went into a roadside a takeaway to have coffee, and they sent coffee for us. And this was the other detainee. It was the Indian detainee as well, and myself. And Lieutenant Niger had to take care of us. And I commented to Lieutenant Niger, you see your colleagues, because of apartheid, you can't go into and have coffee with your colleagues. He wasn't pleased when I told him that.
Do you remember the name of the other detainee?
Indrasen Mudli, he was subsequently charged with Salim Essom and others.
Yes. So you arrived in Johannesburg, and where were you taken?
I was taken, we arrived in the basement of the security police of John Foster Square. We arrived in the basement. I was taken out of the car, taken to the lift, and taken to the 9th floor. I think the lift goes up to the 9th or something, and then taken to the 10th floor. I was taken to the offices of Colonel Crayley, who subsequently I learned was the head of the security branch at John Foster Square. And I was handed over to Colonel Crayley, and Colonel Crayley then got one of his staff. I'm expecting to be released and go to my parents. and he gave instructions in Afrikaans, go lock him up. So I was taken to the cells, which is adjoining, in the complex, but adjoining on top of the charge office. I was taken to the cell.
So one of the lower floors, second?
There were only 3 floors on the cell.
Okay.
Yeah, where the cells are, there's only 3 floors. On the second floor I was taken. I was taken to the cell. They didn't take me to Rudipur, they took me to my cell. I don't recollect, I don't even think that at the charge office it was recorded that a political detainee has been brought to the police cell there.
And can you tell us about your experiences at John Vorster?
It was in solitary confinement. Taken out for half an hour for exercise in the courtyard, and that's the time you had your shower as well. There was a shower in the courtyard. And there was a water supply pipe below the window. If I stood on that pipe, I could actually see out of the cell, and I could see Commissioner Street and Market Street. That means it was looking east. And at times I could actually see people that I knew. But I couldn't shout at them. I couldn't shout because of all the traffic and everything.
And were you further interrogated at John Vorster Square?
Absolutely no. I was not interrogated at John Vorster Square at all. My stay was basically in solitary confinement.
And on the 14th of March 1971, you were called into an office?
Back to Colonel Training's office. I remember the name of the security policeman, was a young chap, Sneeman, his name was, I think, and there was Sergeant Bower. They took me to the office of Colonel Training, and as you got to the office, Colonel Training then tells me that you are released, you can go home. Do you have any complaints? I said, yes, I've got complaints. I was assaulted and beaten up while I was in Durban. He just swore at me and told me, just get out from my office, just get out. And before he said that, he said, you are being released, but the CID wants to question you. If they detain you, it's got nothing to do with the security police. And have you got any other thing? I said, yes, when I was detained, I had my passport was detained and some personal belongings. So Colonel Training then gave instruction to the Sneeman, I don't remember his rank, take him to Captain Dirker's office. Now, I've known that name because he was one of the investigating officers of the Rivonia trial, right? So he takes me into Dirker's office, and there's a whole lot of documents on the table. And as I walk in, he looks at me and starts swearing me. He said, you communists, now you want to know what information I've got on the table. So he threw me out of his office as well. But I couldn't get my passport. Now I asked him, he said, no, you'll never get anything of yours back. So I was then taken to the CID office. I was introduced to Major Fick. He told me that he was a responsible investigating officer of your brother's deaths, and we'd like to ask you a few questions. They wanted to know whether Ahmed had any tendencies of suicide. They wanted to know whether he had any mental problems. It was basically such questions. And then they took me home. It was the CID that took me home. And my mother, everyone was surprised when I was released.
Mr. Timol,
Just a minute. For how long were you in John Vorster?
From the time in John Vorster Square, I was there from the 1st of December right up to the 14th of March. My total period of detention was 141 days.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
Mr. Timol, before you left the United Kingdom, you testified that you had received training and instruction in particular on how to deal with interrogation. Were you ever advised to commit suicide rather than betray the movement?
The instructions were very clear that in the event of arrest, hang on as long as you can, hold on as long as you can, so that don't give information of other members of your unit, to give them enough time to get away. But at no point were we told to commit suicide or take our own lives. It was accepted that as political operatives against a party, the struggle against the party, if you got arrested, you will go to jail. But no one expected, I did not expect, that Ahmed would have been killed in detention, which has happened before. But to take one's own life, I don't think that we take our own lives, particularly political activists. And I was not given such instructions.
And did you see any document issued by the Communist Party, or for that matter, any other opposition entity which called on or exhorted members to commit suicide?
During my period of stay in the UK for 3 years, I regularly read the publications of the African National Congress called Sachaba, which came out monthly. I read the African Communist, which came out quarterly, the South African Communist Party Journal. All publications by the African National Congress of the South African Communist Party. At no stage was there any talk about suicide, of when you're arrested, you must commit suicide. But what we were told, and what we knew, that in the course of detention, the chances were very high that one got killed in the course of detention. And there were already 21 people. While I was in the UK, I knew there was a list of 21 political detainees that were killed in detention. And the first one was Luxman, who was killed in detention, and Imam Harun was killed in detention in 1969. And what in my reading of ANC journals and publications, and they had a list of all the detainees and what was the finding, if there were inquests, and what was reported by the police or the judicial finding was that either they committed suicide or the detainee hanged himself with a shoestring, or fell on a bar of soap, or fell down the stairs and had concussion and died. And that was the story.
And just to complete this aspect, after you had returned to South Africa, did you ever come across any document or newsletter that suggested suicide by the Communist Party or any other organization?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Mr. Timol, very briefly, can you just describe to the court what transpired after your release from detention?
Firstly, my family were very overcome and full of emotions. And one of the first things my mother told me, to say a prayer, to perform a prayer, that and thank God that you've come back home alive, and that you should go to the cemetery to pay respect to your brother, which I did. Right? But then shortly after that, the inquest started on April 22nd. And I accompanied my parents daily to the inquest, which went on over a period of time, right up to June the 25th or something like that there. And we sat throughout that period to every sitting of the inquest.
And in terms of your own trajectory, I understand that there were some more brushes with the law, and that ultimately you left South Africa.
The inquest finding was Ahmed had committed suicide, which as a family we never accepted. Our community didn't accept, nor our relatives, nor the wider community in South Africa accepted that Ahmed committed suicide. On the first anniversary of Ahmed's death, there was an impromptu, it was a Sunday, and there was an impromptu gathering of students from the local school on family and friends at our flat. There was a long passage, and Helen Joseph, a renowned political activist whose banning orders were not renewed, she came to the flat to pay respect to my family, to my mother, and she gave an impromptu speech at the flat, and there were quite a large crowd of people there. And I met some political activists that I knew about. And I started a political relationship with this political activist. Subsequently, in the second anniversary of Ahmed's death, and by this time, political prisoners were getting released. And we were in contact with political prisoners, and we were encouraged that Ahmed's name resonates with many people in South Africa, right? That he was someone who was involved in the underground, arrested, and subsequently killed, right? And we can use his name to mobilize people, resistance against apartheid. So we then organized the second anniversary. We formed a committee called the Ahmed Timol Memorial Committee and organized to commemorate the second anniversary of his death, with the purpose also calling for the release of political prisoners, the unbanning of the African National Congress, and the return of the exiles. But a few days before we were going to have it in a sports ground, the Minister of Justice banned that rally that we were organizing. And at the last minute, the student union at Wits, the Student Representative Council at Wits, agreed to host that memorial meeting at Wits. So that was the second anniversary of Ahmed's death, and we had quite 300 to 400 people attended that particular memorial meeting. And subsequently, we then formed a committee called the Human Rights Committee, and I was then elected as the chairman of that committee. And what we wanted to highlight, or what we highlighted, was basically the Human Rights Charter, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We highlighted the oppression and suppression in South Africa not respecting human rights in this country here. We highlighted the plight of political detainees, the deaths in detention of political activists. We highlighted political prisoners. So we were basically doing legal work, but with the aim of promoting an ANC agenda. As a result of the activities of our committee, in 1976, at the height of the Soweto uprising, I was once again detained under Section 10 of the Internal Security Act, preventive detention. And I was taken to Modderby prison and put in a cell with 30 other political detainees. And there were 3 cells of about 100 detainees in total. There were prominent South Africans who were detained at that particular time. I recall the name of Dr. Ntato Mutlana, a very prominent doctor and activist from Soweto, on Reverend Makachwa, who was also detained at the time, Peter Magubane, who was a photographer. We actually slept on a mat next to one another, and we were detained for a period of 4 months. And there were people of different political persuasion, Black Consciousness Movement, SASO, ANC aligned people, PAC aligned, and at times you felt it was better off if you were in solitary confinement. And on December 27th, just after Christmas, most of the detainees were being released, and I was in the last batch of about 10 detainees. We were released on the 27th of December, and we were informed we were released, and as I'm walking out of Modderby prison, the security police stopped me. They took me into an office, and they said, "We've got a present for you. The Minister of Justice has just issued a house arrest order for you." So there was a house arrest order for me, and I had to find my way home. I contacted my brother, who is sitting in court today. I managed to call him. There were no cell phones this time, but I think I used the prison phone and asked him to meet me in Johannesburg. I took the train to Johannesburg, and I met him. And one of the first things that I did was met someone at the station who was also under banning order, and an ex-political prisoner. So I met him, and I already violated my banning order on the very same day. I was then taken to home, and my restriction orders meant that I was allowed to leave the magisterial district of Johannesburg at 6 o'clock in the morning. I could come to Johannesburg for the sole purpose of work at my place of employment where I was arrested, and return to my home by 7 p.m. in the evening. On a Saturday, I was allowed out from 8 a.m. till 12 noon, and from 12 noon till Monday morning, I had to be in my home. I was not allowed any visitors. My parents could receive visitors, but not me. I was not allowed in the company of more than one person at a time. I was not allowed to participate in any political activity or any other activities, right? Shortly after my release, my brother got married. I could not attend his wedding. I requested permission to attend his wedding, which was out of the magisterial district. I was refused. My niece, who grew up with us, got married. I applied to attend her wedding. I was refused. So my movements were restricted. And if Monday was a public holiday, I could not leave on that Monday as well. I then started work. I went back to my place of employment and asked my boss, will you employ me? He said, no, the security police were here, and they wanted to know whether he was prepared to employ me. And he said, he's not concerned about the politics. I was a good worker, and he doesn't mind employing me. So therefore, in my restriction order, they had actually a clause that I can only go taking the shortest route to my place of employment, which was just 2 blocks away from here, and I started working again.
Mr. Timol, according to your affidavit, in January of 1978, you escaped from South Africa, and you then embarked on a career with the African National Congress in exile, engaging in anti-apartheid work in neighboring countries, and then eventually you returned with the unbanning of the ANC. Time doesn't permit us to go into that interesting history. I do have 2 final questions. You have testified that when you were asked by Major Fick whether Ahmed had any suicidal tendencies, you said that he had not. Since he was your brother, did you detect any other emotional imbalances, any depression, anything that would potentially have made him unhinged?
Ahmed loved life, and there's no way that he would take his own life. No way. He was mentally very stable. He had an extremely strong personality. He was a very mild person. He wouldn't want to be involved in a fight. Yes, in a debate, he would argue in debate, but he would not. He was not an aggressive person at all, right? But he had politically a very strong conviction, politically. But he would not take his own life. And in Islam, I mean, we do not advocate taking one's own life as well.
And in conclusion, Mr. Timol, please feel free, if you so wish, to say a few words about your late brother Ahmed.
It's very difficult. It's very difficult. He was very young. Ahmed died a week before his 30th birthday. He had a whole life in front of him. And he did not have to leave England. He had a girlfriend that he introduced me to, and I met her on numerous occasions, and she's kept in touch with us in his 45 years. She remarried, but the contact is still there, right? Ahmed enjoyed his stay in the UK, he enjoyed his teaching, but the calling to return to South Africa during the most difficult days of apartheid, when apartheid was at its height, when the security apparatus was controlling the entire country, where people were living in fear of participating in political activities. But yet Ahmed decided that the calling to return to South Africa, he left South Africa legally, he was allowed to return legally into South Africa, and in a small way, begin the process of building an underground resistance movement against the apartheid system. Because post-Rivonia trial, Mandela and Sisulu trial, post the trial of Bram Fischer and others, underground activities that virtually come to a stand, and the resistance against apartheid came to a stand. So Ahmed, for him, it was a calling, and I'm sure if he had lived, and if he was tried with Salim and others, he would have gone to Robben Island, and he would have enjoyed being with political leaders of the highest of integrity. And he would have studied. While a few days before his detention, he was writing his BA degree through UNISA, and he was studying after he returned from South Africa. So there is no way. Ahmed, I think his students, or what you call them now, I don't know what, learners, I think they all, he was my teacher at one point as well, and Salim's teacher as well, Salim Asaf teacher. He had an empathy with his students, and he had an empathy for the poor people and for the oppressed people. And he had a way of teaching, recognizing the limitations of the country that we are living in. But he tried to get the best out of his students, and he encouraged his students to study and get to know the world that we are living in. Right? And therefore, at the time of his death, there are people up to now who have not forgotten him 45 years later.
Thank you, Mr. Timol. Your Lordship, that concludes my questions for Mr. Timol.
Thank you. Mr. Pistorius?
Thank you, my Lord. Your Lordship, yeah, you've already described your brother. Thank you, Mr. Timol. Maybe just two short questions. When you went to Durban, it seems to me that Ahmed was suspicious that he's being followed. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Look, all he told me that we were under surveillance. I wouldn't want to ask him more questions than necessary, because I'm not even supposed to be know really his underground activities, right? And in the course of the training, also we were told, you only need to know what you need to know. Don't ask questions, right?
So he did not elaborate?
No, he didn't, and I did not even ask him.
You didn't want to ask at that stage, right? Okay, the only other question that I need for clarification is, in Durban, while you were interrogated, after the interrogation, you were taken to cells.
To?
In Durban,
Yes.
when you were interrogated, when
yes.
you were arrested there, detainee there, after the day's interrogation, were you taken to cells? Did you sleep in cells in Durban?
To a cell.
Into a cell, yes. Police cell.
Police cell, to a police cell, yes.
Police cell, not an office. You didn't.
At the Berea police station. No, I was interrogated in offices,
Yes.
at the Fisher Street security police offices, and what I learned, that was their head office in Durban, and I was kept in a police station. I was interrogated in an office.
Office.
A normal office, in a normal office.
Yeah. But once that's finished, were you taken to a cell then, to a police cell?
Yes.
Once the
yes,
interrogation
yes,
was finished?
Yes, like they did every night. They took me to a police cell at the Berea police station.
That's all I wanted to know. Thank you, my Lord.
Thank you. Mr. Timol, thank you very much for
Thank
your
you.
evidence.
Thank you.
You were able to assist us a lot in understanding. You were able to assist us a lot in understanding the background to Ahmed Timol. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, yes,
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Van.
My Lord, we have no further witnesses for today. We do have one witness for tomorrow. That's Dr. Dilsham Jetham.
Yes.
And we are hoping and expect to complete her evidence by the end of tomorrow morning.
Yes. So we'll adjourn until tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. Yeah.
As the court pleases.
Is it still 9 o'clock?
Yes, she has requested 9 a.m. so that she can get to the mosque by midday.
Yes. Okay. Well, tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, we'll resume. For now, we are adjourned. Is there any? Anything, Mr. Pistorius?
No, thank you,
Will I have the subpoenas tomorrow morning?
Yes, you will have the subpoenas tomorrow morning.
Yes, okay. And I hope to hear from the commissioner tomorrow morning. Fine. Then we are adjourned until tomorrow 9 a.m.
We need to check.